What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you for tuning in. This is Best Served Podcast 170, and we are talking onboarding and employee retention and satisfaction. This is Best Served Paragon, a new channel, and Andrew Parr is with us here of Angry Olive Consulting. Andrew, thanks for being on.
Heck yeah, Jensen. Thanks for sharing your air with me on a Sunday afternoon.
Absolutely. Look, if you followed us at all, you've seen Andrew before, and you've definitely seen him commenting as he has been behind the scenes doing a lot of work on the efforts around the Paragon pillars. And so I'm excited because I think we're going to be doing this more often, have some conversations about some of the things that we're hearing and seeing are top of mind, most important as we continue to evolve the hospitality restaurant industry. So the Paragon pillars, you're going to hear a lot more about this. It's an evolutionary ethos around a roadmap to an equitable, profitable, and sustainable restaurant model. We'll talk about what that means. It's really based on two outcome goals that we have for the industry, two pillars therein. And they came from an idea where I really wanted to see 65-year-old line cooks getting ready to retire, having spent 35, 40 years in the kitchen, and they have the proverbial gold watch and the pension coming because our industry has invested in the opportunity for them to have the quote unquote American dream and to be able to put 2.5 kids through college and do all the things that so many industries allow for people that have dedicated themselves. And just too often that is not the norm in our industry. So we want to see that happening. So there are two pillars here we're talking about. Number one, and we're going to be focused on this pillar today, 75% employee retention and satisfaction. Andrew will get deep into the numbers, but basically we're inverted. We're at 73% turnover rate, and the average tenure of a restaurant employee is 56 days. That is not sustainable. Something has got to give. Absolutely. And number two, and we'll talk about this in other episodes, 19% net profit. We're saying fuck COVID-19. Restaurants need 19% net profit. We see that restaurants are absolutely fundamentally the pillars of both culture and commerce within any given community. And we see the need to invest in restaurants' viability long-term, the sustainability and profitability side of the Paragon pillars. And we see the opportunity for all 107, 112, 142 line items in a restaurant budget P&L to be looked at as partners, as stakeholders that are all investing in the success of restaurants, because once again, we see that all these ancillary industries absolutely need restaurants to be successful in and of themselves. Those are the two things we're going to be talking about. All right, that's my rant. Andrew just penned a great article. I'll drop a link into the comments. And you'll see a lot more. Andrew's Medium page, we're going to be funneling a lot through there because I can speak. I cannot put together 4 sentences to make a paragraph to save my life. So Andrew, amazing writer, and really puts into context having decades and decades of restaurant experience. So the article, we're going to kind of touch on that as our roadmap for what we're talking about today. So Andrew, lay the groundwork for us. Onboarding, employee retention, satisfaction. First of all, it's easy to pay lip service to these things. It's easy to say, well, yeah, that's something that we obviously do. Yet in action, in operation in restaurants, myself included for years and years, I just was not good at this. And too often these scenarios play out. So kind of set the table for us a little bit.
Yeah, I think also in terms of the Paragon pillars, this is one of those topics that is most specifically focused on the who, but also is super intertwined with the why. And so you actually get significant financial results as, you know, a major factor in taking care of the who the right way. So this is one of those places where everything is really kind of tied together. In regard to the article, you know, I think, and listen, I've been through this too, and you know, at the beginning of my career, I worked for a company where the only time you did orientation was on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning before you open the doors. Yep. And we didn't open until 11. And so, yeah, it meant that the manager needed to come in an hour early to start doing that, or 2 hours early. That's a whole nother conversation about how we don't have a respectful relationship with time in our industry.
Worst.
You know, but I think all things being said, that was not a horrible way to do orientation and onboarding, because in theory there's no distraction. And you've got, at that time the concept was a kitchen manager concept, not a chef driven concept. So you've got the kitchen manager taking care of the back of the house, answering phone calls, taking care of vendors. And so the assistant general manager is able to just focus on the people part. Obviously, as we move away from those years, now we've gotten a lot into a situation where you have somebody that walks in the door and is awesome, and you want to hire them like right then. You don't want them going out, taking another phone call, interviewing with somebody else. So instead of saying you have to, you're hired, but you have to come back on Saturday morning and it's Tuesday, you're going to say, you know what? I want you to come in at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, fill out your paperwork, and we're going to get you started, which seems potentially brilliant, right? Like, you've got this person locked down. They're not going to interview with anybody else.
Man.
Except, what happens from that point is a movie that we've all seen before. And it's almost at this point a comedy of errors, where they come in and then, it's shift change, and the manager that's supposed to do the paperwork is taking the last couple server drops. Then they have to change out the bartender's drawer so the new bartender can start with a clean slate. And then boom, huge happy hour push comes that you maybe weren't expecting. PM staff, now you're trying to shuffle them onto the floor as quickly as possible. And guess what? Strap on your apron, follow Sally, and we'll do your paperwork after the shift. And after the shift, the manager has no interest. Like, everybody just got their butts kicked. Everybody's tired, so the manager says, we're going to do your paperwork tomorrow, except that manager's off tomorrow. And they forget to put in the communication book that the managers that are on need to do the paperwork. Fast forward, 8 o'clock on a gloomy Monday morning, and the administrative assistant is ringing up your phone, asking you to remember every hour you worked in the last pay period, because guess what? Today we have to process payroll.
You're giving me so much anxiety right now. This situation all the time. And when the excuse is always like, we're just so busy. I was just too busy. And again, the respect that we have for time, which is such a paradox, because we move in 30-second increments in the kitchen and 15-minute intervals in the front of house with points of service. So we understand time. Like, we have these internal mechanisms, yet when we look at the macro of time, we don't respect our time, because we are just so input. We just keep churning like a hamster on a hamster wheel until the day is done, until we put it all to bed, versus us strategically looking at our time and managing it well. Because that employee, Andrew, and we all know, that employee now goes, okay, so like when they say that there's an actual standard, it's kind of a loose expectation. When they are saying the accountability of what they say and what they do, that's a loose interpretation, right?
Right.
So then we all of a sudden say, this is exactly what I expect of you for your job. I told you to do this. You were supposed to be here at this time. You were supposed to be doing this. This plate was supposed to be looking like this. This drink is exactly this recipe. Why would they believe us? Like, why would they believe us when from day one, day zero, they're not even in the books yet, we have already set the tone and the precedent that time doesn't matter, that accountability does not matter. And then we wonder why there's a lack of accountability downstream, and then we point the fingers at them. Yet really, that was our responsibility from the get. So this is the groundwork that we want to lay for you and understand is like, me, Andrew, I know we've discussed this, have not done the best job of that every single time. We had the best intentions to, yet we allowed the minutia of what we do and how we do it to consume us, and the why and the who slip through the cracks, and they are always the most important and fundamental. So we have to absolutely focus on these. All right, take us to the next point of this. I think I'm doing a lot of ranting here. I can just feel the energy is high right now.
And I think that, you get the picture. This then becomes an incredible downward spiral, right? So, Gallup did a survey, and only 12% of employees in this survey believed that they were onboarded well. And then Glassdoor did research and found that with a strong onboarding program, companies have 82% better employee retention than they do if they don't have this onboarding program. And so it's like you said, it starts from day zero. We set the expectation, and whether it's in words or actions, we're in a position too where now we've also seen that an employee that has a poor onboarding experience is 2 times more likely to go out and continue looking for a job, right? So now we've already talked about the situation where the administrative payroll system is calling you to verify your hours. You haven't even received your first paycheck yet, but you're back to looking for a job because onboarding was a mess.
And it goes beyond that even. Administrative assistant, a lot of people listening to this go, that's cute. That's me as the owner.
Right.
I don't have anybody else. So that's a reality as well. And then this scenario is played out. Hell, again, I'm like, have to tell myself a lot in this episode. I've definitely done that. Been like, just look at the schedule, like, oh yeah, they work this day, that day, and that day. And I just made up their hours.
Right.
Because I thought I knew. And then they get their paycheck. And then one of 2 things happen. Neither of them are good. One, they look at their paycheck and they realize it's wrong and they don't say anything because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be, that sore thumb. Like they don't want that. Yet that goes deep inside. And I guarantee you, they are not bought into your culture for 1 second. They are absolutely part of the number of people that are twice as likely to go look for another job before they've even truly started their job. Or number 2, now there's already friction at the front end. They have to come to you and say, I don't think this is right. And then there's always an awkwardness. Then there is, well, that's what your hours say. Well, can I see my time slips? Well, you don't have your time slips. Well, we don't pay attention. Like it just is not a good scenario. And it leads to culture. The word culture gets thrown around a lot. And I think because we're in the experience side in restaurants of creating these dynamic experiences, these exciting experiences for people, there's so much fun and energy and delicious, and there's booze and all these dynamics, we think that the culture is already baked in because everyone's having an amazing time. Yet the culture is below the surface. And that's really, really important. And I like that Lisa just threw up the word culture. I know so important to Lisa and Mark Voss. Culture. When we think about culture, what are some of the things saying that we need to be paying attention to when it comes to kind of culture and building that culture, Andrew?
Well, the culture really boils down to the restaurant owner or the restaurant group's why, right? Like when I'm talking to a client and we're deciding whether we're going to engage with each other or not, the first conversation that I have with them is, why do you want to do this? What's in it for you? What's in it for your employees? And what's in it for the community that you want to go into? And that community shouldn't be, oh, well, I want to find, the least expensive spot, or I want to be in Rhino. And if I'm not in Rhino, I'm not going to do this. Or I need to be in Sloan's Lake, or it's important
You're picking artificial things. Is that kind of it? Like things that are, again, the what, the how, the where, and the when, and they're not spending enough time on that why and who.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that the where and the when are directly tied to the why, which again doesn't mean that the best spot for you isn't Rhino. It very well could be, but that where needs to be directly tied to the why. And if the why is that you're fast casual, you do well with a walkable neighborhood, and you're going to be drawing people from that neighborhood and surrounding areas, and all of the things that go into that. But really, the why is, I'm creating this menu because it speaks to me as a person, and because this is where my passion comes from, and I'm pulling some recipes that were my mother's or my grandmother's, and it's not just because Aunt Sally told me that I should open a restaurant because I make this recipe really well. It's because the people around us and the community need to share in that common food experience.
Yeah. So what you can hear us talking about is why. Now we're not talking about the process of onboarding employees. Because if you do not have your why and your who, if you do not understand why you get out of bed in the morning to do what you do, and the expectation therein that you will set for your team, and who it is that you serve, and who's in the trenches actually making it happen, like those things will crystallize and allow that everything that happens downstream to happen actually more efficiently. Talking about the feelings that are evoked in the why and the who actually create, in my humble opinion, efficiency. I believe that creativity can be empowered by organization. I believe organization is driven by creativity. And so I think they go hand in hand. And sometimes people that are analytical and people that are more on the hospitality emotional side, they don't see eye to eye in that. I absolutely believe that you have got to get people bought in so that they become ambassadors for your brand, that they are not just regurgitating steps of service, that they truly believe in the hospitality aspect of your why. So onboarding, let's now that we've gone pretty heavy-handed on the why and the who, let's talk about some practicality. You mentioned some of the numbers on the adverse, and then you mentioned the numbers of people that thought that they were properly, onboarded. Give us a little bit more understanding of what we can do from a procedural standpoint that we see an opportunity to actually achieve this goal, knowing, right? We mentioned the time. I don't have a lot of time. Like, I just don't. So how do we create a more efficient system, Andrew?
Well, and see, here's the thing is that the looking at time with a scarcity mentality is absolutely backwards in this situation. Because the problem is that when you're running 73% turnover, if you have a staff of 50 people, you're going to replace 37 of them during the course of a 12-month period, which means that, are you doing 37 individual onboarding experiences? Are you able to group them together? But herein lies the issue. And the issue is, if you properly plan for onboarding and you know what it takes in terms of a time commitment for the manager, for the person that's going to be training the new employee, for the new employee themselves, you will reduce your turnover and time will begin to flow for you because you're not spending 37 days a year onboarding a new employee.
That's like simple math, yet it's also theoretical, right? The cost of what I'm putting on the schedule today is the numbers that we look at. This is a challenge that I always have with the way that we've tied cut and control mentality to our prime costs, our food costs, poor costs, our direct labor costs, which then junior managers get responsibility for. And don't get me wrong, I am seconds and pennies. I want to really understand and manage seconds and pennies, yet from a driving growth and investment versus a cut and control mentality. I think it's an important distinction because we've all been in this scenario. The Sunday shift, when you did not forecast very well, you did not adjust and understand what was happening in the moment. You were not driving top line revenue. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, we're going to be way over our 9.2% target goal. And you cut the entire staff. There is zero chance that your internal guests and your external guests are going to have the proper experience. The experience that you laid down when you did properly onboard them, say, this is why we exist. This is who we serve. This is who we are. There's zero chance. They are overworked. They're underwhelmed in the experience on both sides of that equation. And so this is, once again, like us really, really understanding and investing in time on the front end.
Right.
So we are not doing things like that. And here's another thing I want to say. I want to throw this out there because we're throwing a lot of shade towards kind of the management, leader side, and ownership side. And we should be, because they are the ones taking responsibility for this. This is absolutely fundamentally their jobs. Yet also on the employee side, 2 forms of ID. Please show up with 2 forms of ID. This is a huge thing where people are like, oh, I brought my college library card. Like, great. That is 0 forms of ID. So it's very important to understand that and set the expectation and the understanding from the get so that it's a proper process, because that's also happened where it's like, all right, well, just bring it tomorrow and we'll get you going. Yet if we want to hold accountability, it would be, completely understand. Why don't you just head home and let's start this process again tomorrow? Yet we are also in a scarcity mindset where, like, you need those bodies. You need those hands because you are so understaffed. you are so in survival mode. You're just trying to get through the shift, like just get the body in there. And even when we think about our staff in this sense of bodies, I want to give props to Chef Alan Plemons for like bringing this to light for me. Was like, we're basically saying you might as well be a corpse. You're just a body that is here to like fill a void that we have manifested for ourselves. So I'm really, really big on that. Understand that there's an expectation. It needs to come from the top down, yet hold accountability and responsibility for yourself as well. Show up with the 2 forms of ID. There's another rant. I told you I was going to rant the whole time, man.
And I mean, and think about it. I mean, 2 points. One, to your most recent, I mean, what if, I know this is crazy, what if there was a way to communicate with the employee before they showed up to let them know what they needed? You need these 2 forms of ID. We would like you to come dressed this way. We want you to be prepared for the fact that your first shift is going to be a little bit paperwork heavy. The reason for that is that we want to get you into the payroll system so that we can pay you on time. Oh, and before, when you were talking about the 2 things that could go wrong, the third one is, oh, by the way, I got my paycheck, my hours are wrong. Oh, and you're paying me at the wrong pay rate because nobody could remember what I was supposed to get paid.
Oh, the pay rate game. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And the reality is, when you talk about setting this up from the front end and understanding what your labor cost looks like as it's scheduled, but not understanding, I mean, this is another form of labor cost. It just all shows up on different parts of the P&L. But, Cornell Center for Hospitality Research reported the average cost of replacing a line level employee is about $6,000. And that includes recruiting, selection, orientation, training, and to your point, productivity loss, right? And so the average cost, according to Black Box Intelligence, to replace a manager is about $14,000 a year. So if we do some real quick math, if you're at the industry average of 73% turnover with 50 employees plus your management team, guess what? It's costing you $250,000 a year to maintain 73% turnover. So, and
say that number again. It's
$250,000 a year. And if you happen to be fortunate to run 4 different locations that each have 50 employees plus a management team, and each also are running at 73% turnover, your cost for your organization is $1 million a year for turnover.
People, these are real numbers, and we're spending so much time trying to pay somebody $12 an hour versus $16 an hour. The money is there. It's right there. The cost is massive for the investment that we're making on the wrong side of the equation. We're spending so much money, and it's in a very, very strong turmoil sense of being. Like, you're struggling, you don't have the employees, you're understaffed. We see labor shortages was the massive thing pre-COVID, right? I saw it not necessarily as a labor issue, but a culture issue playing out at mass scale. And so the money is there. We are absolutely looking to invest in people so that you don't have the $1 million loss at your 4 locations because you're just churning through people. And here's the thing, Andrew, there's always this argument too. Well, we spend all this time and effort and money on them, and then they just leave. And the reality is, like, what's happening now is you're not spending the money and they're potentially staying, right? You need to make sure that you are empowering the very best people, and we're just not at scale. I'm sure there's plenty of restaurants that are doing an amazing job of it in and of themselves, but at scale, we're being called out right now as restaurants are no longer a great place to work. We need to reconcile with that and understand what it is. And a lot of it starts at day 0.
Yeah.
It starts in us not setting the expectation for why and who, and just getting so into the what and the how. Now, again, I want you to have the 27-point checklist to make sure that you are absolutely hyper efficient on the what and how. Yet the effort and the time should be spent on the why and the who. So you can check those boxes really damn quickly, I think is very, very important for us to understand. So
right.
Great. Any last thoughts? Anything else we need to leave people with
before
we wrap?
Again, to your point, I want to remind everybody there are absolutely restaurants out there that are doing a great job. This is a broad stroke overview of some of the real challenges for a lot of other people in the industry. And I think that in terms of starting at day zero and talking about what we need to talk about, onboarding needs to focus on engagement and excitement and a sense of purpose and real human connection, and everything else flows from that. And so if everybody goes into orientation day one, and let's not forget also, onboarding is not a day long or a week long. Onboarding is a constant process. and
Forever.
and let's not, right. And let's also remember, if you have a server that gets promoted to bartender, you need to onboard that person again. Right.
Yes.
It's a whole new process. They understand the culture, right? But it's still an onboarding process. You don't just look at them and say, here's your new bar kit, go bartend. There's another onboarding process.
We have to be thorough in it. All right, we're going to wrap. I'm going to leave you with this little Easter egg, a little cliffhanger for some of the things we'll be talking about next. We're very much talking about the onboarding process. Yes, all of this will once again be like the Paragon pillars, right, of getting to 75% employee retention and satisfaction. That is the goal. This is one of the ways that you can go about that. The other thing that I want people thinking about is we think about that in 4 different ways. And I'm going to type this out right now because I want you guys to see it. When I think about the ways in which that we can invest in people, it's an investment. It's not just about giving somebody a raise or a promotion or moving them into a new title like you just mentioned. It is about really fundamentally investing in them. And I think that comes in 4 ways. And I'm super slow at typing, so give me a second here. And culture, last one, period. All right, this. Wages, benefits, education, and culture. These are the 4 ways that we see an opportunity to invest. So wages, pay people a livable wage. The end. That's it. No matter what that means in your community, you need to understand what that is. You need to be thoughtful of that. You need to actually interact and engage and not be idealistic about, well, I lived with 4 people when I was coming up. Well, what does it actually cost, the cost of living within your market today? You need to be thoughtful of that. Pay them a living wage. Benefits, we absolutely see the need, and it's a high marker for people picking one job, an employer over another, is benefits. Are you protected? Is there a way for that? You can have health insurance, dental, vision, any of those things, whatever that means for you, being clear on that and knowing that that is an importance. Education and culture, educating your staff, ongoing education. The bartender position you mentioned, do they get to do bar 5 day? Are they doing bar smart? Like, are they invested in? Culture, is there a way that we are getting together and taking trips together, interacting with each other in a meaningful way? What is it that you're doing to invest in culture? Because what happens is if you as a restaurant, let's say you have the 4 locations and you have 118 staff members, and you say each quarter we're investing an additional $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 into our people this quarter, and you go to your team and say, where would you like to see this money allocated? What you're going to find if you create transparency and clarity with your team is you think that they'd say, I want to get paid more an hour. Yet if they have the livable wage, most often they're going to ask for investment in other places. And that is valuable for a restaurant, because we know that when you're budgeting for a single employee, you are actually typically budgeting 1.5 because of the additional costs of payroll taxes, of workman's comp, of the potential for unemployment insurance, and being on the hook for that. And so if I'm paying somebody $50,000, it actually is $75,000 that I'm budgeting, not true cost, but that's what I'm budgeting for it, right? And so your team understands that, say we could invest that, but remember, we're going to be investing that across the whole cost, which means you'll only be seeing X of that money. And they say, you know what, we'd much rather get a butchery class for the entire kitchen. And you will see the development of culture. Now they get to own part of their culture. Wages, benefits, education, and culture, so important. Last words, Andrew.
I mean, last words are what's next. It's time to, get up and do it. That's it. It's got to change, because those numbers need to come down and we need to take care of our people.
The end. Why and who before what and how. Once again, the Paragon pillars, roadmap to an equitable, profitable, sustainable restaurant model. Andrew Parr of Angry Olive Consulting and I are going to be working on this a lot more. You're going to see this kind of interaction as we touch on other topics. Please read the article that is in the comments on Medium that Andrew wrote. You'll see a lot more of those. And absolutely feel free to reach out directly, as we'll be hosting a lot more conversations, and we want you involved. So much of what we're putting out there is coming through conversations that we're having. So many of them from the employee side are coming on the back end, and I get a lot of direct messages. I know Andrew does as well, because there's a little uncomfort and awkwardness to push back against the institutional establishment of what restaurants have been to this point. And if we are not flexible and fluid in the way that we evolve, there's a huge opportunity that we go the way of the dodo. And I really know that we love this industry so much. It just is ready, and it's time. And it's been a long time coming for us to evolve the model. So we hope that this is just a little piece of what can lead to a more, again, equitable, profitable, sustainable restaurant model. Andrew, my friend, thank you so much. Great conversation. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Happy Sunday to everybody.
All right, everyone. That is it for today. Tune in for more Best Served Paragon. You'll see a lot more from us. Cheers.